Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Gaston Bolaños to defeat Marcus McGee. And I'm here to recap UFC Fight Night 234, Ankalaev versus Walker 2. Magomed Ankalaev is still maybe the greatest light heavyweight on the planet. He is a guy that is considered by many to be the best, the uncrowned king. After that draw against Jan Blachowicz last year especially, where that was a title fight and it was ruled a draw, but most of the people thought Ankalaev won. Regardless, no matter where you rank him, this was definitely a step back. And I say that being fully aware of the fact that Johnny Walker is a top 10 fighter and a dangerous guy and a main eventer and all that. But this is a step back. And I thought that when they were first booked the fight, 6 months ago, whatever it was. And then after that shit fest, they had to do it all over again here. And in the end, I think it worked out for Ankalaev. You know, he got a main event slot because once the fight fell apart the first time, the UFC said, fuck it, these two are both main eventers anyway. We'll just put them on a card in a few months. And Ankalaev ended up getting the knockout as well. Beautiful finish over Johnny Walker in round 2. And if nothing else, it's a highlight for the reel. The reel that the UFC will need to put together to sell Ankalaev in a pay-per-view title fight or whatever. But he is definitely right there, Ankalaev. He pretty much had the title in his hands practically a year ago, but now he's still right at the door, knocking on the door. And if Jamal Hill should get injured or whatever, Ankalaev can fight for a title tomorrow. Jamal Hill is ahead of him because Jamal Hill actually had the title and he's coming back now. So he'll get the shot first. But Ankalaev, I don't know who he's going to fight, but it's either going to be a step down or a title fight. So that's where he's at, one of the best fighters in the world. And here he proved to be too dangerous for Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker came out like Johnny Walker, and Ankalaev had to tame him and slow him down. You know, it was a battle of kicks early, and then he caught him with a beautiful right-hand counter. Knocked him silly against the cage and then put him away. Ankalaev does have power. He can be more of a tactician, but half his wins or so are knockouts. Now a little more than half, I believe. And he proved to be dangerous enough for Johnny Walker's chin, which has always been a little suspect. For Johnny Walker, he is a guy that now has 5, I think, knockout losses. He's definitely vulnerable in that area, and he's so dangerous that he's always going to have a high profile. So with a few wins, he'll be fighting some killers, and I think his chin is going to pay the price fighting these killers that weigh 200 plus pounds. So tough loss for Johnny Walker, but Ankalaev is the story of this fight. That guy's a bona fide contender at this point. Like I said, could step in for a title fight tomorrow. And now he's gotten a lot more attention with a beautiful finish over Johnny Walker. Jim Miller, he looked phenomenal against Gabriel Benitez. I thought this fight was really close, and Jim Miller started wrestling in the first place, and ripped him to the mat with some well-timed takedowns, and took over the fight from there. But even on the feet, if they were just fighting on the feet, I thought Miller was a step ahead. I did think came down to the calf kicking battle on the feet, and I thought Jim was getting the better of him. I also thought Jim hit him with a bunch of beautiful left hands, counters in tight, and I thought Gabriel Benitez looked pretty durable. Again, he's a guy who's had some suspect durability. But Gabriel Benitez, he, despite having some vulnerabilities and whatever, he's a guy that's only been finished in round 3 once, or outside of round 1 once, and it was Billy Quarantillo, where he got the shit kicked out of him. Here, he didn't get the shit kicked out of him. Jim was just a step ahead, but Jim was too much for him, technically, plain and simple. And Jim, once he was able to take him down, he was sucking some of the life out of Gabriel, to the point where at the actual point of the finish, I thought Gabriel Benitez kind of just said, fuck it. You know, I think it was a bit of a face crank going on or whatever. But I think Gabriel kind of checked out once Jim took him down in round 3 and took his back. But Jim was a beast. Jim Miller, He's going to fight at UFC 300 now, again, unless something tragic happens. And here with a win over Gabriel Benitez and now 4 out of his last 5 and whatever the hell else got going on, he's got a lot of momentum. He can have a big fight. He might get that Brock Lesnar fight. Who knows? But regardless, Jim Miller's got a lot of momentum right now, a lot of attention right now, especially with all this UFC 300 hype. And as my favorite fighter, him and Darren Elkins, I am very happy to see him get a high-profile win like this. This fight wasn't supposed to be the co-main event, but Manel Kape missed weight. And then it was promoted, and Jim shined. And he was not far away from winning his first decision in a long time. Like I pointed out in the pre-fight video, he has lost his last 7 decisions. So this one doesn't change that, but he was really close to changing that. And even better than winning a decision, he got a 3rd round finish. A last round finish is always my favorite. And Jim Miller got it done. It looked phenomenal again on the feet, on the ground, and the wrestling was there for him as well. It's something where Jim, when he's fighting these more physical lightweights, he's had a tough time being the dominant force as the fight goes on. Starts to lose the physicality battle. Here that wasn't the case. These two were evenly matched in size, and Jim was the more explosive fighter, hit some really nice double legs, and he was the sharper athlete throughout the whole 15 minutes. I thought Jim looked phenomenal. And for Gabriel Benitez, this is his first submission loss in well over a decade, I think. He lost by submission twice before he came to the UFC, and since then he hasn't looked vulnerable in the UFC, but Jim Miller is exceptional, and if he's winning the wrestling, his grappling is going to come alive, and he's got a great chance of getting you out of there, and that's what happened. So, excellent win for Jim Miller. He's got all the hype and momentum, and I can't wait to see who he's going to fight at UFC 300. And for Gabriel Benitez, this is not, it wasn't his night, but it's not the end of the world either. Yeah, he's never going to be a title challenger and whatever, but you know what? Neither is Jim Miller. So, well, I don't know about that. Maybe Jim puts together another streak. But tough loss for Benitez and excellent moment for Jim. Mario Batista beat Ricky Simon. This was an excellent fight. Really fun fight. And Mario Batista was able to take away the wrestling of Ricky Simon, which isn't the end of the fight when you're fighting Ricky Simon, but then he was able to get the better of him on the feet, and I thought Mario was excelling as the fight went on. I thought down the stretch, he was obviously the better fighter, and Ricky was kind of, a step behind. Really, I thought he was about to get hurt. Looked like he was eating some rough shots, but he kept himself safe and kind of just fell off towards the end there and lost the decision. Tough loss for Ricky Simon, who is a workhorse and was outworked here. And for Mario Batista, the guy has turned a corner where, he had that close fight with Damon Blackshear in his streak here, but still, that could have gone either way, and altogether, he's on like a 6-fight winning streak or whatever. And this win over ranked Ricky Simon caps it off very nicely. Caps it off. I say that like he's done. He might be in the middle of a 10-fight winning streak. I don't know. But this was a solid victory over Ricky Simon and a very fun fight. Mario Batista, well-rounded guy. He's not the most powerful guy, but, he's got a good build and he's athletic and he can bang. And he was too much for Ricky on the feet. And, Mario Batista, I think, was a contender anyway, but still, he has leveled up here. Bruno Ferreira knocked out Phil Hawes. This was, tough to watch. I just feel like Phil Hawes, he's got to be done. He's just got to be done. He's got so much good skills and so much offense going on. He can go beat the shit out of a lot of fighters on the regional scene and even in the UFC, but he can't take it. No one's going to beat the shit out of him because that implies that there's going to be a sustained beating. He can't take shots. And I know Bruno Ferreira is a big, powerful guy, but they're all kind of big and powerful in the UFC. And Phil Hawes just, it sucks. He's 35 going on 36, and he's suffered too many concussions already where there's no coming back from this. So, sucks for him. And I don't want to just make it about Phil Hawes. Bruno Ferreira now 2-1 in the UFC, 2 beautiful knockouts. And Say what you will about Phil Hawes's chin, but Bruno Ferreira got it done, and he kept pushing. I think there were seconds left in round one, and he clipped him with a beautiful shot on the side of the head, maybe halfway to the back of the head. And but whatever, in the middle of fire, that's what happens. And then he knocked him out with another shot on the ground. Bruno, he's had some vulnerable guys, even RoboCop. He's got a weaker chin, but Bruno Ferreira, you can see it. The guy throws, and he's got some serious power. So good win for Bruno because he's going to be moving forward. So I'm happy to see him get the win. And for Phil Hawes, yeah, I'm hoping this is the end. He's got a lot going on, but defensively, there's too many holes. So he's got to, try to find another career. Easy for me to say. Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Andrei Arlovski. I don't like Waldo Cortez Acosta. I wish Andrei Arlovski would have kicked him in the balls. It's not like I didn't like him before this, but after the fight, yeah, I don't really like the guy. I think he was a dick to Andrei Arlovski, but he outpointed him. He did win cleanly. I thought Andrei was competitive, certainly in the end, but a step behind, definitely. And Waldo, who's just as big, just as strong, and at this point maybe twice as dangerous and probably twice as durable, was a rough time for Andrei Arlovski. Andrei, I thought, was keeping himself safe under fire early because Waldo was really going for the knockout, but Andrei wasn't making anything work for him. He needed to try to open things up, take down, leg kick, whatever, even just make the hands come alive. But instead, he kind of kept himself alive and then played catch-up for the rest of the fight. Tough loss for Andrei Arlovski. I don't even know if I'm going to say. I wonder where he goes from here. He goes right back to the UFC, probably. Although the losses are starting to pile up, so I don't even know about that. But for Waldo Cortez Acosta, yeah, moving forward, this is a great name to have on your record. Obviously, Andrei Arlovski doesn't mean what he meant, years ago. But still, he's a solid, crafty veteran, and he was outpointed by Waldo Cortez Acosta, which you could argue is more impressive than knocking Arlovski out at this point. So yeah, good win for him, but at the same time, fuck him. And yeah, it sucks for Arlovski. Preston Parsons beat Matt Semmelsberger. Man, my round 3 prop, the round 3 submission, that fucking Kimura. He was halfway there, but Semmelsberger did a good job surviving in the end, especially knowing, I think, that he was gassed and he was going to lose. Preston Parsons was all over him. He was able to take him down from the beginning. He got him down early, or towards the end of round 1 anyway, but in round 1. And I thought he took away the danger from Semmelsberger and made it his fight. And it wasn't so easy. Semmelsberger ripped him to the mat in round 2, and I thought his physicality might take over, but Preston Parsons was the better worker, had a much better work rate, and of course a better technician as well, as most fighters are compared to Semmelsberger, and he out-hustled him and controlled him in the end. Came kind of close to getting a submission, but I think Semmelsberger proved pretty tough and kept himself safe. Sucks for Semmelsberger. He's gotten some very pretty wins, and he's had some grimy losses, and this is another one. But I think he'll stick around, and for Preston Parsons, he may have turned a corner. He's fought to a decision now a few times in the UFC, and hasn't looked bad, although the Trevin Giles fight was more of a mess. But here, this fight, while still a bit of a mess, was Preston Parsons' fight, and I thought he looked great down the stretch. That brings me to Marcus McGee versus Gaston Bolaños. Gaston Bolaños, he's a guy that I wasn't sure what to make of his chin. I saw him get rocked by Brendan LaRocco or whatever, the guy that triangle choked him with a spinning wheel kick, which I think Marcus McGee saw because he kept going for it. But I wasn't sure what to make of his chin. I don't even know how his 3 losses occurred in Muay Thai. But here, he was rocked. He was rocked a few times by Marcus McGee. I thought he was losing the striking battle. It's not like he was just rocked and finished. I thought he was on his way to losing a points battle even before the knockout, but he was eating some heavy shots, getting knocked around, ended up getting TKO'd standing, which some people will complain about, and I will too here and there, but not in this fight. I thought it was a good stoppage from, I think, Mark Smith. But I remember thinking in the moment, yeah, he's keeping himself up, and yeah, he's going to fool the ref, or he is fooling the ref. And he did for some time, but the ref was on to him. Again, I think Mark Smith, and he stopped the fight to protect Gaston Bolaños, who might have too strong of a chin for his own good, maybe. But great win for Marcus McGee. Marcus McGee is not the seasoned striker that Gaston Bolaños is, but he is a striker as an MMA fighter. He did mix it up, going for a few takedowns. He ripped him to the mat once, I believe. I don't know. But I know he mixed it up, but on the feet, he mixes it up there as well. Marcus McGee fights at range. He's quicker, probably more powerful than most, and got some really well-timed strikes, hooks, incredibly accurate, and he was the better striker than Gaston Bolaños. It is one of those MMA striking things where, yeah, you could be the seasoned Muay Thai guy with a record and a career and whatever, but this is MMA. Like I think Paul Felder was saying, with small gloves, it's totally different. And Gaston Bolaños was a step behind in every department: speed, power, and on the outside, he was just getting beaten up. And his counters weren't there for him on the inside because he was actually getting hurt. So he tried to do that, remain calm under fire and beat him up on the inside, the Slavokos thing, but he was just getting hurt too much. And in the end, Marcus McGee gets a standing TKO over the Muay Thai expert, Gaston Bolaños. Great win for Marcus McGee. This guy is the guy that should have won. I did pick Gaston to win because I thought it was a stylistic thing, but I think I said this in the pre-fight video. Marcus McGee would be the better fighter. Between the two of them, if you were to give them a sample of 10 fighters each, good fighters in the UFC, Marcus McGee would do much better against any sample of 10 fighters. And I just thought it was going to be a tough matchup for him, but he passed the test with flying colors here against Gaston. Beat him up on the outside and got a finish. And speaking of finishes, Farid Basharat beat Taylor Lapilus. Now, this was not the most thrilling fight, but Farid Basharat neutralized a neutralizer in Taylor Lapilus. Farid Basharat looked good on the feet, especially early, making shit happen, but wrestling was always going to be the story of this fight, especially if Taylor Lapilus lost. And that was the case. Had a good amount of control, was able to shoot in on him and rip him to the mat, I believe all 3 rounds, and had a lot of control over Taylor Lapilus. And Farid Basharat is now, 15-0 or something. And maybe it's a little less than that. But yeah, the guy's looking perfect. And he's not afraid to look boring either. Here he beat a really good fighter in Taylor Lapilus, who still has a very pretty UFC record, whatever it is. 4-2, I think, now. And it sucks for Taylor. He just came back a few months ago, but still, he's 1-1 in his new run here. And I think Farid Basharat is a loss that's going to age pretty well. So, no shame there. Jean Silva knocked out Weston Wilson. Weston Wilson probably regrets not touching gloves at this point, but Weston Wilson was just a step behind Jean Silva. Wasn't able to make anything work, takedowns and whatever. And on the feet, the guy does not protect himself. He has some karate that he can make work for him when he's, in his flow state, as the kids say. But here he was never going to be in a flow state. Jean Silva was just too dangerous and too strong for him. He wasn't going to bully him around. Certainly wasn't going to get him to the ground. And on the feet, it was only a matter of time. Weston Wilson's been knocked out twice. Once on the ground, once on the feet. But concussions. But both times he was unconscious, and here he just couldn't take the power of Jean Silva. He was getting knocked around left and right. It was obvious what was going to happen for the last minute of the fight, and then eventually it happened. And yeah, Weston Wilson doesn't belong in the UFC at this point. He's too compromised and not so great. But Jean Silva, welcome to the UFC. That guy's a fucking killer, and he did what he needed to do here. Again, the guy only had 1 decision win, and it was on the Contender Series. And he looked very good there, but I think in general, this fight here against Weston Wilson, that's more representative of who Jean Silva is as a fighter. He's Wanderlei Silva. So great win for him. Nicholas Mota knocked out Tom Nolan. This was fucking awesome. even though I lost money on it. Nicholas Mota is a guy that's been written off by people like me for not having the durability, and I stand by that. I don't think he's going to fare so well moving forward, but he is going to move forward. He kept himself alive here, and he did it with a knockout in like a minute or whatever over the young Tom Nolan, 23-year-old gigantic kid, 5 inches of height and reach and whatever the hell else he had. And Nicholas Mota cracked him on the inside. Tom Nolan knew Nicholas Mota has a compromised chin, and he was fighting like it. He was fighting like a young, exuberant kid, going after, the whatever, the lion with the limp or whatever. I'm starting to sound like Vitor Belfort and the old lion, whatever. But Tom Nolan got a little overzealous, and Nicholas Mota cracked him on the inside, and Tom Nolan found out himself he doesn't have the durability that he thought he did, I guess. Which, I'm not saying he's got a horrible chin. He's 23 years old. And, moving forward, it remains to be seen how his health looks as a fighter. But here, I think he felt unstoppable. And Nicholas Mota, who is 30 years old in his prime and has mostly knockouts in his whatever wins, 13, 14 wins, he was too much for Tom Nolan. Cracked him, and that was it. Tom Nolan went down, and Nicholas Mota put him out. It's the kind of thing that changes a profile of a fighter. Tom Nolan was 6-0. Like I said, I saw his one amateur loss where he was TKO'd in round 3. That wasn't him getting cracked like this, though. That was fatigue and whatever. But here, this changes his profile. He's definitely got potential durability issues, despite the power and danger of Nicholas Mota. So, tough loss for a 23-year-old kid with everything going for him. And for Nicholas Mota, excellent win. I mean, this guy, he, like I said, compromised and whatever the hell else, but he's still in his prime at 30 years old. And he came into the UFC, not with a lot of hype, but a fair bit of hype. And had only one win so far over Cameron Van Camp, who already fizzled out. And now Nicholas Mota, he's got his momentum back. Hopefully Tom Nolan goes on to do good things and this win ages well. But even if it doesn't, it's a great win for Nicholas Mota. Made his team proud. And, also made Jim Miller look good, because Jim knocked him out a year and a half ago. So awesome for Nicholas Mota. Really happy to see it. I like that guy. And for Tom Nolan, it's not the end of the world, but definitely a big setback. Speaking of setbacks, Felipe Bunes, looked good early against Joshua Van, and then Joshua Van turned it all around. Joshua Van is now 3-0 in the UFC, and he has had trouble in round 1 in all 3 fights. Zhalgas Zhumagulov, Kevin Borjas, and Felipe Bunes now. Bunes, who is much more of a submission artist, a submission threat anyway. Like I said, he's really comfortable on the feet. Throws some well-timed counter hooks, which counter strikes with his long, rangy arms. And he was going to town on Joshua Van. I thought he looked really good early. Had Joshua Van very flustered, where it looked like Joshua Van was never going to get going. But Joshua Van did what Joshua Van seems to always do, and that is he grew and grew. And, what's his name there? And Felipe Bunes was not. He was falling off, and once the shots started to add up, once Van was able to start touching him, and when Van touches it, he mixes it up to the body and the head, really sucks the life out of you. And that's what happened. Felipe Bunes, who's never been knocked out or TKO'd or anything, was falling apart. And Joshua Van smelt blood in the water, because it seemed like he just kept accelerating, and he put him away. So Joshua Van, moving forward, you're going to hear me harp on it the next time I talk about him, that this guy gets better as the fight goes on. He's a guy that will do better down the stretch. And Felipe Bunes, now this changes his profile as well coming into the UFC. He's got his first TKO loss, and definitely you could attribute a good bit of it to cardio. And he wasn't the one who took the fight on short notice either. Joshua Van's the one who took the fight on short notice, which is, again, just an extra feather in his cap. So Joshua Van's got 2 comebacks, kind of. Not that he came back from death or whatever against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, but lost round 1 and then won the fight on short notice twice in his first 3 UFC fights. So Cardio, I'd say, is definitely a major strength of Joshua Van, as well as his boxing there, his striking. And yeah, he was too much for a dangerous Felipe Bunes. So, awesome fight for Joshua Van, rough debut for Bunes, and overall a very good event, UFC Fight Night 234, and the highlight is definitely Jim fucking Miller. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.